beautiful morning. And actually the themes that have preceded, they serve up somehow to what I'm going to talk about. But I am convinced that we are at a unique place in history where we are going to experience a transformation that I call from the economy of me to the economy of we. What does that mean? To me, that means that we are going to some extent, leave a period in economic history where we have a singular focus on the economic bottom line alone, and we will start having a bigger definition of the bottom line. I call it profit, people, planet. And we are going to start thinking a lot harder about how to use all of our resources, including women, thank you, Ingrid, to actually create economic growth, good businesses, and prosperous societies. I have spent the last 15 years actively involved in, I guess, empowering women, or as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as investors. And my inspiration came actually from the women who came before me. So I want to share this story. Icelanders know it. Those of you who are international guests don't. But 40 years ago, on October 24th, on my mom's birthday, I was 7 years old, so I'm also dating myself, women in Iceland took the day off. They went on a strike. Whether they held professional jobs or worked at home, they decided to do no work that day. And they stormed into the center of Reykjavik. 90% of women did, and I went along with a lot of women, and nothing worked in Iceland on that day. And this started, no schools opened, no banks opened, nothing worked, because when women are not at work, our economy doesn't work. And on that day, I decided that I also could matter, that I also could participate in bringing about change and progress in my country. But I still think I found it a little strange that women needed to show that they mattered. To me, as a 7-year-old, they were the most important people in my life. But still they had to, and since then Iceland has been at the forefront, and I don't know if you know this, but Iceland ranks #1 in terms of closing the gender gap in the world, according to the World Economic Forum. This is very important because where we close the gender gap and empower our women and men alike, we actually experience the healthiest economies, the best business results, and the most prosperous societies. This is not a women's issue to empower our women. It is an economic issue to do so. And increasingly the world is waking up to it. Now, it took me a while to wake up to it. I had to spend 10 years in the US, worked in corporate America, a wonderful time. I'm a great fan of the US. But I learned a lot about being a woman in the corporate American world. But I had to turn 30, and some things had to happen in my life before I fully embraced that it actually matters in more ways than I realized. And it kind of happened when I was part of founding the Reykjavik University. Actually in 1999, I joined the founding team, and we started a program. So it was called Auður í krafti kvenna. And for those of you from abroad, I know that's a hard one to pronounce, but the name is significant. Auður was the name of one of our foremost Viking women. She was called Auður the Deep-Minded. And the name signifies both wealth and happiness and also empty space. So we thought it was the perfect name to name an empowerment initiative geared towards not helping women, because that's something that I didn't really think that we needed to do, but helping our economy grow by using our women as entrepreneurs. And I thought this was a very interesting challenge for me, because as I had gone through 10 years in the US, I had actually mostly been in denial of being a woman. I did what Ingrid did. I went into the clothes of a man, I behaved like a man. It was fairly natural to me. I like football, and I am a Man U fan. Jon? And I actually really liked that, and it served me well, and I achieved success on some levels. But as I grew up, and as I went through this 3-year empowerment program where we created 51 new companies, over 200 jobs in the wake of the dot-com bubble, I learned the real economic value of women. But when this really became important to me was when I had the second Auður, my daughter, who's 11 today, the same age I was when Icelanders were the first country in the world to democratically elect a female president, Vigdís Finnbogadóttir. She had such a profound influence on me as a little girl that when I got asked to write an essay in school shortly thereafter of what I wanted to do, when I grew up, I said, well, maybe president or an office manager. It was kind of the two choices. And I didn't see the difference. A young boy, a few years into her, probably your age, a few years into her presidency, was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, well, I don't know. And somebody said, do you want to be a president? And he said, well, can boys do that? These are the kind of things that happen when we have role models like that. So I am forever grateful for the women who came before me and gave me and my generation the opportunities we have had. But I also take it with great responsibility to be one of the women who walks before the women who come after me. And I know this minister who joined us today does as well. The third Auður in my life was in 2007 when I joined a woman who I met through a network of the first Auður, and we founded an investment firm, all-female team, not because we wanted to be an all-female team, but because in 2007 the banking bonuses were far exceeded what an entrepreneurial company could offer, and very few men were willing to walk away from it, at least initially. And we actually set out with a vision to incorporate feminine values into finance. We had a few laughs in 2007 because it was a good party that was going on in our economy and nobody really understood why we needed to do anything specifically with feminine values. A year and a half after we founded the company, we experienced the most infamous economic meltdowns in history. Hopefully we won't ever experience anything like that again here or elsewhere. And we survived intact. And I would say the combination of those three Auðurs in my life is the why and the motivation for why I am committed to contribute my living time to make a difference that I know that matters. But it's not just about my emotional commitment to this. This is about hardcore economic data. So I want to share with you just a few quick facts. This is actually the educational gap. This is the human capital. Empowering women is very much about using the human capital. Since the 1980s, we have been graduating more women or more girls than boys from universities. If we continue at the same rate for the next 25 years, there will be no boys in universities. Now, we won't do that, but there are serious issues here to be considered because the human capital is largely coming from women or girls. It is about the market. Women make, directly or indirectly, as much as 85% of all consumption decisions. How can any company think that a boardroom, management team, or a founding team can have no women on it and understand the market opportunity out there? Not only is it a sizable market that's growing enormously right now, it is actually a dissatisfied market. So thinking about creating unicorns, why not go for this most sizable, fastest growing financial market in some way? Third, it is about leadership. Significant research is now out there that shows that more feminine values are needed in leadership. And by the way, men and women can have feminine values, can use feminine leadership styles, are needed now, particularly in these times of uncertainty in our world, where we need innovation, where we need to engage people. Employee engagement is at 30%. 2/3 of all people working today are either disengaged or actively disengaged at work. It is considered by the leading thinkers of leadership that with more feminine, more transformative leadership styles, we can lift employee engagement and we can increase productivity. It is about innovation. It is about not embracing sameness anymore, but actually engaging different people with different minds around the table, because great dialogue leads to good decisions. So we have to start embracing diversity around the key decision-making tables in order to be able to innovate. And it is about the bottom line. Because companies that embrace diversity, they simply deliver a better bottom line. This is a study from the largest companies in the world. Companies with 3 or more women in the boardroom significantly outperform those with no women in the boardroom. So why we only have 15% of women in the boardroom in most countries in the world, 43% in the Icelandic Stock Exchange listed company, so we are the world record holder in this country. We got there with a gender quota. Why we don't do it makes no sense to me, even if I just look at the economic bottom line, because there is more money to be had. But it is also about what I call a bigger bottom line, because we know now that women and younger generations, and particularly entrepreneurs today, embrace a bigger definition of the bottom line, meaning that they want to consider profit and the impact on people and the planet as they develop their business ideas. That is an idea that investors have not embraced as much in the past as they will in the future, and we know that. And this is perhaps where the biggest transfer of money is going to happen in the next 10 years, meaning investors are going to start looking at social entrepreneurs and impact entrepreneurs as a great, an important way to solve some of our social problems and also make money. You don't have to choose between. When I have shared all of this data, it must feel amazing that we also have this data. 97% of venture-funded businesses have a male CEO. What an opportunity it is to actually build more businesses that can deliver to the economy and to society, do good business. It is actually very disappointing to also know that those managing money are women are at token levels in the world of venture capital. And not only are they at token levels, there are fewer women in the business today than in 1999. It's going backwards from 10 to 6%. This is important. Why? Because people tend to invest in people who are similar to them. And it has been well proven with statistics that venture capital firms that have women partners are twice as likely to invest in companies with a woman on the management team. Twice as likely. So I understand why you didn't get money. And this is particularly interesting and almost starts being infuriating when you see one of the most famous investors in the US, Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank investor, expressing to us last week that he has 27 companies in his portfolio and the only ones making money are women CEOs. And it's very important when he says it. We've had the data for a while, but when he says it, people start listening. We have very little data about how women do when they manage money. We do know that in the United States, about 2.7% of all institutional capital is managed by women and men with different ethnic backgrounds. So 97.3% is white men. Nothing wrong with white men, a lot of them in this room, and I love them as well, and love working with them. But we know from research over a 9-year period that the few women that manage money in the hedge fund world, they outperform the market by 55%. And as institutional capital is my pension, I actually care about the alpha that can be had by more women managing money. I can't make the inference that women managing venture capital will, because there are so few of them, and the few that are new. But I think we can see that there is some positive results to be had. So there's no wonder that the chair of entrepreneurship at perhaps the greatest entrepreneurship school in the world, Babson, from your hometown, has concluded that there is an enormous untapped investment opportunity for venture capitalists smart enough to look at the numbers and fund women entrepreneurs. But to you, and this is my message to those of you investing in this room, but the message to those of you who are founders in this room is that there is enormous long-term success to be had by thinking about your team composition also from a gendered perspective. While you might be able to raise money easier by being all boys, statistics show us that, you will be able to build a more successful, more profitable business long term by thinking about having a gender-balanced team. It is for all of those reasons before that we are hosting a global dialogue on closing the gender gap in Iceland this summer. On the day that we actually celebrate the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote in this country. Those women started progress for this society. The women on October 24th in 1975 took it further. Our first female president took it further. The women who founded the all-female political party and changed the face of politics took it further. And our generation also needs to take it further. Not for women, but for our society. Because if we really look at women and the economy, we will quickly discover, and in a message from Christina Lagarde, who is opening this conference, that there is as much as double-digit economic growth to be had if we only tapped into women in the employment market at the same level as we do with men. We will also discuss with the head of Google Glass and the only female professor of computational mathematics and engineering at Stanford why we need girls to think about choosing technology subjects as well, and why this is important, and how this relates to entrepreneurship. We will also talk about why women need to run for office, and how difficult it is when they do. But we have had amazing women here who have done it, and we have perhaps a historic moment coming up in the United States, where for the first time in the history, we might have a woman in the White House. And we have some important messages and some important leaders who have been changing the face of leadership. We will also talk about executive leadership and how to build inclusive cultures and how to get people of diverse backgrounds into the boardroom, because it delivers to the bottom line. Now, who's going to reject having more than 50% higher bottom line? I don't think anybody using their rational mind would think that's a bad idea. We will focus on women and entrepreneurship with professors from some of the best schools in the area. And we will have our very Gina Davis, Hollywood actress, not because she's a Hollywood actress here, but because she has actually been studying since 2007 what our kids are watching on TV and what the impact is on our ideas on what we can do. She calls it, if she can see it, she can be it. And we also have a barbershop breakfast for men, where we actually gather only men to talk about this. Because you know what? At the end of the day, it's about a lot of unconscious bias. So I'm going to actually refer to your words in the end, Ingrid, when you said you have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Talking about women and men and talking about gender is something that people find frightening, not the least successful women, because it doesn't necessarily help. But when you really look at the data, and you know that you can build healthier economies and better businesses, you can make more money, and societies can prosper better by using all of our resources. Why in the world would we not get uncomfortable and make it happen? That's what this is about. And it's about choosing, are you going to be part of creating a future that's coming, if you look at the data, which embraces all of us, or are you going to be part of the past? I know which is going to make you more successful. So I'm going to encourage you, investors, to realize that you have unconscious biases when you choose investments, and you are more likely to invest in those who are similar to you. It may not be the best way to make money. And I'm going to encourage you, founders, to think about the composition of your team and build a team for long-term success, and be willing to be uncomfortable, because it's more difficult to be on a diverse team, but it creates long-term success. With that, I wish you lots of success. I love being here. I'm proud to have been invited to speak after such great speakers today. Thank you, and best of luck.